Hear what's new in higher education and legal reform next on Behind the Headlines.
This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, welcome to a new edition of Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenawalt, Senior Fellow of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and I'm joined by Maura Donnelly, my co-host. Maura, hi.
Hello, Charlie.
It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you, too.
Today, we're very fortunate to have one of the top policymakers in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to talk about one of the most important subjects. It's been one of the most important subjects, continues to be one of the most important subjects, and is the subject which Pennsylvania spends most of its money on, more money than anything else, and that, of course, is education. We're fortunate enough to have with us the chairman of the Senate Education Committee, Senator Jeff Piccola. Senator, welcome to the
Charlie,
show.
good to be with you. More good to see you, too. Thank you for those kind words.
Oh, it's the Senate is fortunate to have someone with your experience, and the Senate Education Committee is fortunate to have someone with your service and your background. But a lot of our viewers don't know that when a new session of the General Assembly starts, as is true now, that the various caucuses, in this case the Republicans are in the majority in the Senate and the House, that the majority caucus gets to name what the top priorities will be for this forthcoming session. And they normally do that by giving low numbers to the top priorities: Senate Bill 1, Senate Bill 2, Senate Bill 3, and so forth. Senate Bill 1 this year is, in this session of the General Assembly, is about education.
Yes.
Would you like to tell our viewers a little bit about Senate Bill 1 and what the new General Assembly wants to do in terms of education and education reform?
Well, Senate Bill 1 is, as you indicated, a priority for the Republicans in the Senate, but I don't want to make it sound as if it's a Republican-only bill. We have significant support from Democrats in the Senate. Senator Anthony Williams of Philadelphia is my primary Democratic sponsor. Senator Andy Dinniman, although he is not a co-sponsor of the bill, is very supportive of various aspects of choice in education, and that's what Senate Bill 1 is: school choice. You know, we can talk about the technicalities, but basically it does two things. It empowers parents in the worst performing schools in Pennsylvania to obtain dollars to exercise their right to choose the educational opportunities for their kids. We do that through targeting those particular schools initially, giving parents up to the state share of the cost of education in those districts and those schools, and then they make the choice for themselves. We also marry into this new bill the already existing EITC program, Education Improvement Tax Credit, which many people are familiar with. It's a very popular program. We're going to enhance that program by an additional $25 million to make more money available for the middle class to exercise the same kind of choice in those districts where the schools may be okay, but for whatever reasons parents want to make other options available for their kids.
Okay, can we just break this down a little bit? I know that there are specific dollars amount assigned to eligibility for families.
Right.
28,000 something, some percentage of the poverty level in order to get a voucher to go to a different school. You mentioned, though, that this is only going to be eligible for the worst performing schools. Initially. Now, how is that determination made? I mean, how are they identified? Are there factors out there somewhere that are used to make that determination?
Well, we have so much data, which is one of the reasons that I think we're going to be successful this time around on choice. We have so much data on the performance of schools. We can get information down to the classroom if we really need it. But we're going to identify, and we've already identified about 144, 145 of the worst school districts academically, and it's based on the PSSA scores and AYP. The worst schools academically that have shown repeated failure. They just have not been able to correct themselves, and that's in year one.
Okay.
And as you indicated, it would be the eligibility is 130% of poverty, the federal poverty rate, which for a family of four would be $28,000, and they would be eligible to receive the amount of the state share to that particular school district for the education of a child. For example, in the Harrisburg School District, which has, I think, 10 or 11 school buildings that are actually eligible, parents would be eligible, the state share is about $9,000. So a parent in the Harrisburg School District whose child attends one of those schools who is income eligible would have the opportunity to take up to $9,000 and choose a school, another public school, a private school, a parochial school of their choice to educate their child. Now, if the tuition is not $9,000, the school only would get the amount of the tuition. Right. It would not get more. But the opportunities, and representing Harrisburg School District over the last 15 or 16 years, I know there are parents who are clamoring for those kinds of choices. On the other side of the equation is the suburban areas where we don't target those areas immediately. The schools are performing adequately or very well. Okay. But for whatever reason, some parents want to elect and make choices. And so EITC has been available for those parents because the eligibility is higher. The income eligibility is much. Will
you tell our viewers what EITC is?
EITC is Education Improvement Tax Credit. It's a tax credit where businesses can make contributions to qualified scholarship organizations. Those organizations, or the business then gets a tax credit for its Pennsylvania taxes. Those organizations then make scholarships available for students in their areas, or it depends upon who set up the scholarship organization. Mm-hmm. There's a couple hundred of them around the state. And again, there has to be income eligible families, but the income eligibility is much higher, so it's more available to the middle class.
So you're proposing to take that fund of money from 100? No,
well,
from 75
it's 75 to 100 million.
To 100 million.
But the actual amount for the scholarship part of that, because part of it goes to what we call EIOs, educational improvement organizations. The actual money available for scholarships will go up by about 30 or 40 million dollars.
Okay, great.
And you have to keep in mind that as parents in those designated districts that are failing use the voucher, the newly created voucher, and had previously been using EITC money, that will free up additional EITC money for use in other parts of the state. So I think it's a good program. It's got huge support from those advocates of school choice, and it's a diverse group of people that are out there looking for educational opportunities for their kids.
Mm-hmm. Well, Senator, as you know better than almost anyone, democracy or a representative form of government such as we have is a laborious, inefficient, labor-intensive endeavor. I mean, the creation of consensus takes years and sometimes generations. And we go back to several years to the Ridge administration.
16 years, I can almost count the days.
And during the Ridge administration, Tom Ridge and his administration was for school choice as well.
Right.
And perhaps they took steps that make this possible.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the data
Yeah.
that we're using is one example of that.
Mm-hmm.
Governor Ridge changed the debate on education. Instead of saying how much more money are we going to spend every year, he said, what are we getting for the money that we do spend? And he created academic standards. He created the assessment system that we know today as PSSAs. Even Governor Rendell added to that by advocating for and enacting the Keystone exams, the graduation competency exams, which aren't fully operational yet, but will be down the road. So measuring student achievement is now firmly in place. We also have something called PVAS, Pennsylvania Value Added System, embedded in every classroom in the state of Pennsylvania. It measures not just a snapshot of where students are, but it measures academic growth through the year. So we're able to measure the academic growth of a school building, of a school district. We can even go down to the classroom level. Now that information isn't available publicly, but we do, and we hope to make that available publicly in the near future. But we can measure academic growth, and so we can find the effective teachers. We can find the effective methods, the buildings that are doing well, the school districts that are doing well in terms of growing academically. So that's one thing we have available.
Senator, why is school choice such a lightning rod?
Well, because it affects the lives of virtually every Pennsylvanian. Anybody who has or knows or is related to a school-age child has an interest. In fact, we all have an interest in it because, in my view, it is one of the most important and probably, and as you said earlier, the most expensive thing that we do in state government. And in large measure, the success that we have in education engenders economic success, because the jobs out there have to be are for kids that are educated. You can't not get a high school diploma anymore and hope to get any kind of a good paying job. And it's not just the diploma. The diploma has to mean something. It has to be backed up with real academic achievement. And so that's what we're all about. The taxpayers, I think, should be interested in school choice, because all the numbers show that when choices opens up the system, you have competition. And so the costs start to at least level off, if not start to go down. For example, charter schools can educate kids for about 75% of the cost of a regular public school in that same school district. Cyber education is available at a reduced cost. So all of these things need to be explored and used and given opportunities in order to put a little pressure on our regular public schools, which we're not out to attack. In fact, what we want to do is enhance them as well by eliminating some of the mandates, the unreasonable mandates that we put on these public schools that drive costs beyond any reasonable level, and get in the way of letting them do the academic instruction that they need to be doing. So we have a three-pronged agenda here. Senate Bill 1 is our first step, but we're going to do a charter school bill which will help public schools, help charters be available in more diverse areas of the Commonwealth. We're going to do a mandate relief package that will free up existing school districts to do the kinds of things in education that I think they want to do, but many times can't do.
Mm-hmm. Well, to follow up on my earlier question, we find that during the Ridge administration, that administration was very supportive of school choice, and they were able to put, as you said, not only the school report cards online to give parents and the public information about education, but then they put they started out with some accountability measures. But we find that the Senate at that time passed school choice, went to the House, and then the House voted that it was an unconstitutional bill. I think our viewers don't know that when one of the legislative chambers doesn't want to vote on an issue, they vote on the constitutionality of it instead, and they voted it down. And what would prevent that from happening this time? If the Senate passes it, it goes to the House again. Even though you have strong Republican support and Democratic support in the urban areas where you find the most wretched schools, I think one of the problems was many of the suburban reps there were concerned about all those city kids coming out and flooding the suburban schools. What would be different this time that might allow you to proceed with Senate Bill 1?
Well, we've crafted a bill a little bit different than the Ridge proposal. And nobody's required to do anything or accept anybody. Public-to-public choice is there, but I think it would have to be worked out between the sending school district and the receiving school district. And so there's an opportunity for receiving schools to, get into the business of educating kids that haven't been given good educational opportunities. This is a little discussed sidelight to what Senate Bill 1 makes possible. But I think what's changed in the last 16 years, and I've seen this, and I won't mention any names, but a number of members have come up to me who said, when I first came here to the Senate, I opposed school choice. I didn't like vouchers. But after seeing the repeated and wretched failure that you refer to year after year after year after year, and seeing the success of the EITC program, which is hugely popular in the legislature, I'm changing my mind. I think school choice is something we have to get into. So you've literally changed votes on this. There was a racial issue, as you indicated, urban versus suburban. That has melted away in part because people are voting with their feet. People that can afford to leave Harrisburg are moving to Susquehanna Township, Central Dauphin School District, the West Shore. So you're not going to avoid that outward migration because people are going to scrape the dollars together to do whatever they have to do to get their kids educated.
Well, so in addition to the education issues, what are some of the other top priorities for the Senate as we wrap up here?
Well, I've been so involved in education that I'm not sure what a lot of the other members are doing, but I know there's a hearing going on the sale of the liquor stores and how do we accomplish that. I think we have to be careful about that because obviously, I would be for it, but it's only going to engender a one-time source of revenue, namely the sale or the auctioning off or the licensing of the private operators. We can't expect to make more money off of it other than that. So we have to be careful how we use that money once that's accomplished. There's talk about tort reform. I'm a huge supporter of tort reform, particularly in the medical malpractice
That's
area.
another one that goes back a lot of years.
Oh
ago.
yeah. I was,
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Unfortunately, there are others leading the charge on that this
Yes.
time. I don't think I'll have to do the leadership role on that, but certainly where I can be helpful, I will be.
Yeah, great.
Okay, Senator, we want to thank you for sharing your time with us and being with us. We hope that you'll come back and give us an update in the not-too-distant future of the progress of Senate Bill 1.
Well, I hope to come back and be able to tell you how we're going to implement the Opportunity Grant law.
Well, we look forward
Great.
to having you back very much. We'll be back with our second segment of Behind the Headlines right after this.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Pennsylvania Business Council, envisioning a commonwealth in which residents enjoy a very high quality of life in sustainable communities. The Council works aggressively to define key long-term policy strategies and solutions that make the Commonwealth more competitive, creating and sustaining a better Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and the American Home Bank, a nationally chartered and FDIC-insured yet locally owned and operated bank in central Pennsylvania, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by Daily Express, transporting construction, farm, and industrial equipment throughout the United States. And by Penn Waste, your best local choice for your waste removal and recycling needs.
Hi, welcome back to the second segment of Behind the Headlines. On this segment, Maura and I are joined by Dave Patti, President and CEO of the Pennsylvania Business Council. Welcome, Dave. So nice to have you back as a guest. And we want to continue to talk about the issue that we're talking about with Senator Piccola, and that is education. You find that the Pennsylvania Business Council is very much interested in this topic and has been very involved with it. Could you perhaps start out by tracing the PBC's involvement in education in the Commonwealth?
Well, I think a lot of the CEO organizations around the country view education as one of their most important topics. So both the Business Roundtable in Washington and all of our counterparts across the country in the state capitals, when we talk to our CEOs about what are the 3, 4, 5 things that it takes for you to grow your firm, to increase your capacity within our state, they're always talking about an educated and trained workforce. So it's up there as a strategic goal for the organizations, because for the companies, it sounds trite, but every one of them will tell you, our most important raw material comes in through the front door every day.
Sure.
That's the human capital, the people who contribute to making the products, providing the services that make those companies great. So having a well-educated, well-trained workforce is something that we've always worried about and have looked at everything from these academic standards and the testing of students, the performance of teachers, to, of course, how do we fund education.
Well, how does the business community feel about school choice?
Well, it's an interesting model. It's the model we live in every day. If we have 2 rival businesses, they're not guaranteed any customers. They have to put a good product on the shelves or provide a good service at a good price that the consumer sees as a value. Otherwise, the consumers will go to the other supplier of that good or service. So to us, it's nothing unusual. You have to perform. You have to beat the competition, and we look at that competition as healthy. Now, clearly, education isn't quite the same kind of good or commodity that some other things are.
And I'm not paid to go to the better commodity either.
Right, but still, you will change. You have a certain amount of money, and in fact, I would argue that what Senator Piccola and Senator Williams want to do is give you your money back. They've already taken your money. Now what they're going to say is, you know what, we took it to spend it this way for you. Here, you choose. And they are trusting in families and students to make good choices for themselves.
Good.
Well, Senator Piccola was talking about Senate Bill 1 have your members and has the association, has the business council been able to stake out a position on Senate Bill 1?
We've started taking a look at it, and at the conceptual level, very much agree with the sponsors of Senate Bill 1. You know, there are certainly tactical issues and things that will be raised by education groups and school boards that you know probably merit some discussion. And I think it's reasonable to talk about how do you do these things, how do you implement. But I think then too that goes to one of the things that we like about Senate Bill 1 is that it's phased in. It's not an all or nothing approach. It allows some learning by the public sector as we try and do something in the first year and a little more in the next year and a little more in the year after that. It gives some time for that accommodation by all the players involved in this. Because there will be some learning, and hopefully there's you know a feedback loop for policymakers as well, both the lawmakers and the people in the Department of Education who will implement this, to kind of say, okay, let's adjust this in year 2 and year 3. Let's do some things differently. But that idea of going after the most vulnerable students first, those who are in the poor performing school districts, and in fact who, because of their own families' low income status, don't have the ability to just pick up and move or just pick up and do something else or go to a different school, are at the most risk of not getting a good education, maybe dropping out because of it, or graduating with a diploma that doesn't really mean anything. I think that's wise, and I think that's something that my members in the business community generally would support, to say, look, you know, we understand we may not be able to do all things for all people right away. Let's go after those children, those families in those communities that are most in need of quick service. Let's triage the system like that.
Well, we seldom get a new governor that doesn't have education as a top priority. The detail of that is different between administrations, but we have a new governor here in Pennsylvania who also has education as one of his top issues. What are the similarities between where the business community stands and what our new governor is looking for?
Well, I think Governor Corbett talked a great deal in the campaign about 2 elements that are related to this, both accountability and choice. That we by instilling choice into a system and competition into a system, you allow people to tailor the education that they need and get a better product, a better service for them, a better educated populace, and ultimately the workforce as well. But I think he also wanted to make sure that we have accountability. Part of accountability is the choice mechanism itself, as customers, if you will, leave a school. But there's more things we have to do in accountability as well. And I think we have to look at our system of evaluation of school districts, school administrators, school teachers. You know, it probably isn't something that either one thinks about every day, but I suspect on some of these education topics, Tom Corbett and Barack Obama are closer together than a lot of people would think. But President Obama's administration and his secretary, Arne Duncan, have also talked about merit pay for teachers and looking at a way to get beyond our traditional models of tenure and union and you know, first fired or first hired, last fired. You know, all of the rules that are part of, and not the whole solution either, but part of what make up our education environment and the ability to introduce the accountability into the school districts. So I think, you know, the governor in his this is very early in his administration, but in his retooling of the Department of Education is looking at those sorts of issues. I didn't read his transition report on education, but I had some friends on that transition team. And one of the things that was interesting that we tried to do is make sure that those of us who were on education, I was on the DCD transition team, those who were on the labor and industry transition team, which has some workplace development, workforce development and job training issues, that we talk to each other informally just to say, let's think about this as an integrated set of public policies.
Great.
One of the things, as you said, the administration is so new. One of the things that I haven't heard any talk of yet, Dave, is vocational technical education. And I think this, of course, would be an area that would be of interest to the Pennsylvania Business Council. What would you like to see? What would the council like to see happen in that area?
You're absolutely right. And within the Corbett campaign, there's certainly some talk about vocational education and training, industrial partnerships, use of 2+2+2 programs. So I think that, you know,
2+2+2 program
being,
is what?
Being 2 years of high school, 2 years of community college, and maybe eventually 2 years of a 4-year program, all integrated together.
Okay.
You know, so that you have a seamless education that puts hand skills with head skills, which really in vocational and technical education is what we're talking about. And you know, Maura's much younger than us, but in our day in school, you know, vocational technical schools were seen as kind of the dumping ground, and that's a shame.
That's true.
Because they are providing phenomenal education. You know, the test scores, PSSA scores coming out of some of Pennsylvania's vocational schools far exceed the traditional public schools. But what we need to do is educate parents, guidance counselors, students on the opportunities that a vocational technical education that helps you to develop skill sets that are physical as well as mental does not preclude an associate's degree at a community college, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, you know, PhD later on. And in fact, might be a better entree for some fields into higher education. But what we're finding in Pennsylvania in the workforce is about 25% of all the jobs out there require a 4-year degree or more, you know, the traditional college education. And about that percentage of our population has those degrees. So we're actually okay on higher ed. It doesn't mean that we have all of them in the right degrees. We might have, you know, a few more communications majors and not quite enough engineers. But overall, we're close to parity there. But 50% of the jobs need something more than a high school education. So technical training, an associate's degree level education, skills training that exceeds what you would get in high school. The unfortunate thing is right now only about 25% of our workforce has those skills, has that additional education. So there is one applicant for every 2 jobs. Now that's good for the applicants in terms of salaries. Those salaries are actually higher than they are for entry-level 4-year degree people. You know, I always say, you know, give me somebody out of Penn or Swarthmore or Carnegie Mellon with a liberal arts degree, and I can get them a nice $30,000 a year job, maybe more if they say, do you want fries with that? But you know, if they're a welder, an electrician, somebody in avionics, computer technology, you know, much higher starting salaries. You know, double that kind of money. Unfortunately, you know, that means 50% of our population only has a high school degree or less. And only about 25% of the jobs, and I think Senator Piccola was alluding to this, that number is going down all the time, the number of jobs for which you can qualify with just a high school diploma or less. And so if we have 2 applicants for each of these low-level jobs, that means we're driving those wages even lower. So half of Pennsylvania's workforce is being left behind because they're not ready for the jobs that are out there, and that's going to keep getting worse if we don't have some training. So we have to find something that provides more skills training right from the high school level on, but also beyond high school, beyond a high school diploma, that leads into maybe advanced degrees. And you know, one of the things that I think parents need to know is that very typically a student who has a vocational technical education and gets a few years on the job, then their employer will pay for the associate's degree and maybe even the 4-year degree, you know, and they'll move up as they show their abilities.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the outlook of the PBC on education. We appreciate you being with us, and we look forward to talking to you about other business-related topics here over the next coming weeks and months, Dave.
Great.
All right. We'll be back next week with a new edition of Behind the Headlines. We'll see you then.